Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Pleasure having you. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Women Making an Impact Live, talking to phenomenal women in different spaces, sharing their stories as to what they're doing in their respective fields and how they're contributing to us as a society and as a universe, just really changing the scope of the narrative for us as women. I'm your host, Solita Roberts, founder of Style to Impact, an image coaching and personal styling agency geared towards women empowerment through style. My goal is to give women the clarity, confidence, and the closet they need to increase their influence, impact, and of course, income. Thank you very much for spending this time with me. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest. I'm trying to when I thought about how am I going to introduce her, I'm like, oh, because she's incredible, she's vibrant, her personality is absolutely phenomenal. If you've ever gotten the opportunity to interact with her, you know everything that I'm going to be saying about her today is absolutely true. My special guest today is Miss Winter Wheeler. Thank you very much for joining, Winter. I appreciate
Oh
you
my God.
spending this
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I am going to let the people, for those who are not familiar with you, just going to give them a brief introduction as to who exactly is Winter Wheeler. So, Winter Wheeler is a former top civil litigator who made her niche is. Oh, let me repeat that. I don't know why I'm nervous. It's like when you're meeting your mentor. It's like, okay, you want to do too much. It's like, no, let's not do too much. So let's do that introduction again. Winter is a former top civil litigator who has made her niche as an expert mediator. She's sought after for her unique, compassionate, and successful style handling complex matters that involves a diverse range of cultures, including Spanish-speaking clients. Winter is the creator of the Four Cornerstones of Mediation, which she introduced to the world in her first TED Talk in March 2021. She is the co-author of the best-selling book Networked, and she's also the creator and the host of the Mediator Now podcast. She's especially passionate about changing the face of mediation and arbitration by bringing compassion, listening to the forefront, and placing the litigator and the emotions in the center of the conversation. And I think that part for me, more than anything, it's what resonates with me because it's we have to have compassion, we have to listen, we have to you know let people express themselves in order to help them. So thank you very much, Winter, for joining me. I appreciate you being here today. What I want you to do is tell my guests a little bit more about you. That's my spiel about you, but you tell me a little bit more about you.
I mean, you did a really great job
I was super
covering.
nervous. I don't know why.
I don't know why either, because it's not like we haven't spoken a million times. We've met despite the pandemic.
Yep. One
You're
of those
adorable. I
things, I
love it.
guess.
I
One of
love it.
those things.
So we oh wait, I'm supposed to talk about myself right now. Just
Yes,
kidding.
of course.
Okay. Okay. I am a mom of four little pumpkins. They are 3, 5, 7, and 9. Um, my goodness. And I've been married for, listen, so long enough for me to have kind of forgotten. I think it's like 12 years at this point. Um, but this past year has been really interesting. So my sense of time has been um, thrown off, to say the least. So um, we've had the kids at home, homeschooling, and I've been working from home primarily, and so has my husband. So yes, my sense of time is a little bit off, but I'm a mom, a wife, and that's kind of my other side.
Oh, I mean, that's incredible. And I'm sure that's the driving force behind everything that you do, right? And I think we
Absolutely.
all we all look at our lives and trying to find that why, that thing that centers us, that bring us back to, okay, why is this we're doing this, and why is it we need to go forward, and why is it we need to create those changes, which is, I think it's important and helps us to develop our personal brand, right? What is it that we want to be known for, and what are some of the things that we want to just have people connect with us. And I think that's important, that to have that family unit, I think it's great. So I think that's a great point of us leading off into the conversation today, which is, talking about being intentional about building your personal brand. I know oftentimes there's this notion that, at least when I was growing up, I never heard the conversation about personal brand. It's like, what is that? You went to school, you got an education, prepared you for a job, but it was never that personal branding part of it. So I wanted to talk to you on that. And what do you think how did you prepare yourself for building your brand? How did you get yourself in that space of doing that?
Oh my gosh. I knew a little bit about the importance of personal branding, I would say most of my career.
Okay.
But I never considered personal branding outside of my role in a law firm. So not even exactly personal branding. But that's kind of where I was. I wanted to get clients while I was in the law firms. And so I would try to distinguish myself from the other people in the firm, but I was also selling the firm everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And I realized that that was not a good way to go about it. I'm lying. I didn't realize it. Someone told me. I went out to lunch with someone, and I had an ask, right? I had an ask of him, and he started asking me a lot of questions about, like, what's your role at the firm, and when did you start also doing marketing and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm not marketing for the firm. And he was like, oh well, it looks like it. And so it hit me that I was going about it the wrong way, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't just about me, and it should have been. And so in my head, I'm thinking I'm marketing for the firm, but also for myself. And people can clearly distinguish between the two. And so the answer to that was no, they could not.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when I realized I needed to switch things up. And I started to focus a lot more on myself, which was hard because I didn't really know what I wanted that to look like. And I spent a good amount of time just thinking about what my goals are, what I would, want my business to look like without association with anyone, right?
Yeah.
If it's just me, what do I want that to look like? What do I want people to think of when they hear my name? And a lot of things came to mind. It was amazing, but I spent a lot. I mean, I journal a lot anyway. So
Okay.
I literally wrote through everything and figured out, I need a personal brand. This is kind of what I think I want to accomplish with it. And then worked through, like, what should it look like? What should it sound like? And all of that. Did I over answer your question?
No, that was no, you did. Listen to me. This is a conversation that we like. I've always said I want these conversations to be real, to touch people in the language that they speak, right?
Yeah.
Not the lack of a better word, speaky spokey way of doing things. It's like we're talking to normal people. We are normal people talking to normal people. So that's great that you put it that way. Because I know there are a lot of women that struggled with, how do I differentiate myself from the company that I work with, right? Because I think when we start to work with a company, we always brand ourselves with that company, right? This is the work that I do. I'm a mediator. I work for this company. So everything that I do is about promoting and surrounding around that company.
Mm-hmm.
When ideally you should be branding and promoting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's because should you not have that job, then what happens? Does your brand change repeatedly with every job and position that you go into? And like you rightfully said, it's, am I marketing the brand or am I marketing myself? Because you should be developing yourself. What would you say to women who are having that conflict in that? How do I separate the two? How do I really
Yeah.
get to that point that I can say, this is me?
And as difficult as it was for me to get there, and as hard as it is for other people to get there, the question that you need to ask yourself is actually really, really simple. If it's, if you're in a position where someone has the ability to tell you that you can't be there the next day, then you are in a space where you can lose your brand, right? So the question becomes, if I'm no longer affiliated with this group of people, I'm no longer affiliated with this firm, what is it that I take with me when I leave? Not my diplomas, I'm not like, that's not what I'm talking about. What do I take with me, right?
Yep.
And I stopped and I thought about it, and it was, you get to keep your reputation. You have your reputation, but how deeply is your reputation rooted in the reputation of the place that you work? And I stopped and I said to myself, you've done a really amazing job branding and bringing awareness to this brand, but not enough to yourself. So people were associating me with that one particular firm, right? At the end of my litigation career.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. Not to knock the firm. There's nothing wrong with the firm. But I didn't own the firm.
Yeah.
I wasn't a partner at the firm. And so no one really should have been associating me solely with that firm. People should have been thinking about me for the skills that I have and for the things that I bring to the table.
Yep.
And since that was not the case, I knew I needed to change. And I wish I could remember where it was that I got that question from. I didn't make that. I did not originate that question, but it's just so true. If someone has the right to tell you you can't come back, that's a job.
Yeah.
That's a job. That's not a career. It may be a job associated with your career, but that's a job.
Yeah.
And you may not always be at that job. So if you need to leave, and like a lot of people did for the pandemic, your boss suddenly couldn't afford you.
Yeah.
You had to go. Well, if you were never associated with anything else, people didn't know who you were. It makes it much harder to find the next job or to start, your own position in that career space. So I'm lucky. I suppose lucky is the right word, that I learned that early enough that I was able to build my personal brand while still working at a firm and start to distinguish myself from not only the other people that I worked with, but from the firm itself entirely.
Yeah. I think that's incredible, because that's where it lies, right? Branding yourself outside of the space that you're in. Because there's no such thing as job security. We all at some point in our lives experience that, where the company would have made certain adjustments and certain changes, and unfortunately you're a catalyst of it, right? So I think it's, do you think, because when I look at your brand before and look at your brand now, and I've only known you for a year now, which has been an incredible year, but I recognize the changes, right? And it started from just as simple as looking at you making that shift from what your profile picture looked like on social media. What is it, that image that you're using to promote yourself? And I know especially in LinkedIn spaces, there's so many of us, and it's a professional platform. We have that profile picture. And it's like, oh yeah, I've had it for years. It's still me. But something as simple as changing your profile picture, getting new photos, signal to me there was a change in your goals. There was a change in like your direction in terms of what you wanted to accomplish for yourself. I know
Yeah.
some persons may say, oh no, that's not necessary. I'm doing the work, I'm putting in the work. But do you think that is part of the mindset shift that we need to adopt when we're building our personal brand? Is not to stay in the space that we were in, but just really look at our brand as a whole and see where we need to make those tweaks?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, the profile picture that I was using when I met you, I had that taken by a firm, and it's a great picture. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with the picture, but the picture matches their brand.
Yeah.
It matches their brand. It doesn't match mine. And so I wanted to make sure my photo fully captured me and what I want to embody. And I felt like my profile picture back in the day, um, it made me look younger than it needed to. I
Okay.
thought it was overly airbrushed, and that was why I looked so young. I mean, I'm still in my 30s, so let's not act like
Let's not go.
I'm
Exactly.
55 in that photo. That's not what I'm saying. But it made me look a bit younger. It made me look a little bit more naive than I am. And people respond to the photo that you have,
Yes.
right? Especially when they don't really know a lot about you, and they're making decisions based off of your photo, whether or not they want to connect with you.
Yep.
And I was finding that the people who were connecting with me were not understanding what I was doing. And so that was an indication that things needed to change.
Yeah.
I mean, there were several indications that things needed to change that are outside the scope of this live, but that was one of them. And so, when I decided on like my branding, like my goals, um my values, my inspiration, and then of course, I worked with the consummate Sierra Marshall of Queen Media. Um, she helped me figure out what colors made the most sense
Yeah.
for the different things that I was doing and what that might look like. And she helped me decide on what font felt best to me. It wasn't me um, accommodating someone else's brand or trying to fit into someone else's brand. It was a brand that was designed for
For
me.
yeah.
And so that felt really good. And picking my own headshot, using that, making it like the centerpiece essentially of one of my websites, it felt good. That was really when I jumped out and started fully branding myself.
Yeah, I can honestly say, well, like when I look at the two photos, yes, there was nothing wrong with it. It's professional. It's in line with, what you should have for your branding and your stock photo. But I saw, not to make it sound like eerie or anything like that, what I saw was this woman in a role, working every day, going to a job,
Mm.
and having this, just like, okay, yes, I have goals, but this is where I work. And now I'm seeing someone who's blossomed into, I want to be a powerhouse. I want to be international. I want to have a reach beyond the spaces that I'm in. And you see that in just the look of the photo, the feel of it. And I think sometimes we lose that sense in that we think that, and even if you work for someone and they're taking your photo, it's important that you know your position, you know how you want to represent yourself, right? And not someone telling you, okay, wear this, do that, but
Yeah.
bring an aspect of yourself to it, I think is important. And most of the times we're in a job and we don't necessarily feel like we have that power to define our personal brand, to tell us, what is it you want to use to represent yourself. So I saw, from looking at it, I saw a shift, and it completely looks like this is someone who is on the verge of doing great things. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people will be like, yeah, but you can notice the change without the person saying anything, that they are on the verge of doing something phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
And
think
yeah, it's true because, I mean, I've always been the same person.
exactly?
So everything that
Exactly.
I want now is something that I've always wanted. And the photographs and the your brand book and all of that, it needs to align with what you want as opposed to whatever brand you're affiliated with. Now, that's not to knock being affiliated with another brand, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. Um, you can have all of that going on, and you can take your headshots that fit with that brand because that's part of what we do, right?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about your own space, you need to be your own person. So don't, and of course I learned this by doing it, right? Nobody taught me any of this. Um, but I realized that in order to really show the world who I am, I needed my own completely separate brand. And the photographs were actually the last piece of that. We came up with, you know, you start with the mission, right? The
Yeah.
mission, the keywords, your personality. How are you going to carry out this mission? And what do you want to look like? That was a huge thing for me. What did I actually want to look like? And you know I worked in law firms for a very long time, and so the goal was typically just to blend in and not look odd. And by odd, I just mean you don't want to look terribly different from the next headshot.
Yeah.
All the headshots were taken, over the course of a couple days by the same person in the same location. And that's just how it worked. But I realized in this process that was not really me. That was what someone wanted me to be. And while, yes, that's my face for sure, it's not me. And so I decided to go ahead and have my own headshots taken. And I had a conversation with the photographer, Nick Nelson, the
Yeah.
brandpreneur.
Yeah.
And I was, and he's amazing, by the
Yes,
way,
he
just
is. Yes, he is. I had
amazing, the
the
work
first
that he does.
experience of being on set with him. Absolutely phenomenal
Yes.
energy. Yeah.
So, he's amazing. And, before I guess it was like a month or maybe a little bit more before we actually took the photos, he asked me what I was trying to convey. Like, what is your brand? What does it look like? Like, what are the things that you need to accomplish? And it was it was a mind opening experience to, God, how to put it? To have someone
Going
listen to
to
what
be,
I was saying,
yeah.
understand what I meant, and help me figure out how we were going to make that happen. So we selected the venue together. we really talked about like what kind of vibe I was trying to bring. We talked about where I was from, where I'd lived, what I was into. You know, he had the right music for me. And he created a mood. And that's really what you're trying to do when you're branding yourself, is you're creating a mood. You know, I love that saying that, ooh, that's a whole mood. Yes, I
Yeah.
am a whole entire mood. How do we capture that? How do we capture that? And how do we make that mood apparent to everyone who looks at the photos? And like you said, I mean, that picture, I love that picture. It's a great picture. I don't use it anymore
No.
for anything. You know, it's only what, a year and a half old, but it's not me. It may have been me in the moment before I realized that I needed to be, I don't know, a greater version of myself,
Yeah.
maybe. But that picture is certainly not me now. I couldn't use that photo for anything at all and feel like it represented me or anything that I do. So yeah, that the photos are
Yeah, it's
horrendously important.
critical, right? Not just it sets the tone. We always talk about, getting your profile, optimizing your profile, making sure that you have the right title and headline and photo. But there's so many persons that take it for granted that the images that they put forth, because if I don't know who you are, right, how do I
Hmm.
connect with you? What's going to make me
Yeah.
stop? What's going to be that thing that says, when I'm searching LinkedIn or any database that's spilling out hundreds and thousands of the same person that I'm looking for, whether or not it's an image coach or a mediator, like what's going to make that person stop and connect with you and want to say, okay, yes, who's Winter Wheeler? Let me have a conversation with this person. So it's those little details, I think, that's important to branding that we often miss. I know
Hmm.
that a person that's working for a company that may not have, one of the questions is like, do I need a website? Because when we think about personal branding, and we're talking, most of the time we're talking about developing if you have a business. But if you
Yeah.
don't, you are, because you don't have, there's nothing wrong with working for someone. You may have a great company that you work for, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean at the end of the day you should brand yourself, right? You should still brand yourself.
Yes.
Do you think it
Absolutely.
do you think it's necessary to, like, how do you, the question should be, how do you tell your story as an employee on social media when you're building your brand on social media?
Yeah. Well, I mean, phew, frankly, I think it's changed a lot since the pandemic, right? So I would not, I mean, I owned the domain. I owned all of the domains that I own now, I think. For a while. I've had them for a while. You
Okay.
know, winterwheeler.com I've owned for a long time. My law firm name that I don't that I don't actually use, I've owned for a very long time. But I did not know what to do with them. I really didn't. And so for me, my law firm page was business winter. So what would I even want people to know about me other than what I do at work? And do I need people to know a heck of a lot more about me than what I do at work?
Yeah.
Because my like clients that I had, I was just talking to them on the phone. They already knew who I was. I wasn't really soliciting anybody who was, far flung or in some crazy part of the world or some crazy little town in America. I mean, I wasn't.
Yeah.
That was not part of what I thought I needed to do. And so the pandemic, though, with everyone hopping online and hopping on LinkedIn, it really just broadened the audience. It broadened what I knew I could do. And so while I always had a very strong entrepreneurial spirit, I've always been very much, I'm going to take over the world kind of a person.
Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Right. We just aged ourselves on that
Yeah,
one.
I know, right?
But, but, I mean, it was just kind of like a thing that I thought. Like, it was never, I'm really going to start mediating in India. I'm really going to start mediating in Turkey. Like those were not literal thoughts I was having. My
Yeah.
thoughts were basically, I'm going to mediate in Atlanta and in Metro Atlanta and hopefully in Georgia.
Yeah.
In the pandemic and everybody's run to the internet has really changed that, because now I can be anywhere in the world at any time. There are people watching from every corner of the world, and I love that. I love when I get invited to speak in places I've never been to, like Croatia, for example, is the
Oh,
most recent
wow.
one. So it's been amazing, but it reminds me of how I felt before and how I would have distinguished myself. And I guess if I had to go back in time and tell 2018, 2019 winter what to do, really work on that website, really work on, or maybe not even the website, but figure out who you are just as a person. And this isn't what you asked me, but
No, but that's all powerful stuff, because that aspect of figuring out who you are. As
yes,
simple, a
yes.
lot of us, like, we think we know who we are, right? And if I asked, most of the time, if you ask, oh, Winter Wheeler, like, who are you? Oh, I'm a mom, I'm a mediator, and we do all of these titles. But at
Hmm.
the end of the day, is it really who you are? Like, if we
Right.
if we take all of that away, who are you as a person? I think that's the key, to
Right.
start with that big question to yourself: who am I outside of all these things that I do? And I think
Yeah.
that's the step forward in making that
Yeah.
decision of what your brand looks like.
And I wrote about that not a super long time ago, but I don't like I realized this. I always realized this prospect, but never really put it into words. And it's just, I think I've already said it today, but I didn't know this until recently. But your job is not your career.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very different. And figuring out who you are outside of that when you're still in your job, or if your job aligns with your career, can be very difficult. And I coach women on how to get their social media presence put together. Um, and I find a lot of women push back on that, and they're like, no, 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 I love my job. My job aligns with my goals and with who I am. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you're not your job.
Yep.
So again, like I said before, if someone can walk into your office and tell you to leave and you have to go,
Who are
that's not
you?
yours.
Yep.
It's not yours. So who are you?
Yep.
Without all of that, who are you? You're not going to continue to say that that's where you're employed. Like that can't be your lead sentence, right? So I'm a mediator and an arbitrator, and I'm affiliated with all of these different places right now, but I'm me. I'm winterwheeler.com. I'm Winter Wheeler Mediation and Arbitration, no matter what happens. I will always be me. I will always have that. And so while I am associated with other things and I'm happy to do that, I need to be cognizant of the fact that someone can tell me not to come back. Someone can take me off of their website.
Yep. I think
Right?
we sometimes take that for granted. I know I've always been
Yeah.
like this person. I don't believe working for someone is a secure. I don't like that false sense of security. Like, no, it's not security. Security comes from building and creating your own. Whether or not you thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, or you're really building your brand. So even if you don't work for that company, you can take your brand,
Yes.
which is you, to another company. But something that you
Exactly.
said before, when you coach women, is that, and you're having that conversation with them being a brand, and who they are. It's like they're scared. What do you think is that Where does that come from? What is it that's holding us back as women to really step forward and say, I'm going to brand myself as X, Y, or Z?
I mean, I think it's a lot of things. I think some of it is fear. I think some of it is denial about our actual position in these companies. I think we often overestimate our positions. We buy into the hype uh, of what's being sold to us. Because, when you're an employee, they're selling to you too.
Yes.
They're selling to everyone else outside, but to keep you there and to keep you loyal, they're selling to you too. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they want to become ingrained in the company culture, and that's great. That's fine. You should do that. That's the best way to do well at your job.
Yeah.
But it's your job. It's your job. So if you have to pick up and go immediately, right? Where are you going? What if nobody else knows you? So if no one outside of your company knows you, where are you going? You're literally starting from zero. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, I can't remember the last time I actually applied for a job. I mean, I can't. And so when I talk about, I didn't really concentrate on personal branding or think about it or try to brand myself, I was the entire time, but not in the same way that I do now. Like now it's a very conscious thing. I'm creating other things, and that's mainly because I have other interests and I have the ability to now focus on all of those things that I'm outside of a law firm. But even when I was in a law firm, I was able to talk about what I was doing, and I got out into the world and I met people and I joined groups. And so people knew me. They may have known me as an employee of X.
Yeah.
But they also knew me. They knew what I was capable of. They knew they knew what I wanted. They knew what I stood for. And so, when someone was looking for that set of criteria that they knew I had, they came looking for me. And I think that's what we all want. We don't ever want to be in a position where, you're submitting your application because you randomly saw the ad on the 5th day it was posted and 500 other people have already applied, which is probably actually a really small number right now.
Yeah.
And you don't have anyone in the company to call. You don't know anybody. You don't want to be there. You don't want to be there because a lot of the time, by the time the ad is placed, somebody's already in line for that job. And they placed the ad because they had to.
Yeah. That's I know from my own personal experience that seeing that, not having it's growing up, I used to hear this a lot. And it's interesting at that time, it's like, that's not true. It's not always what you know, but it's who you know.
Yeah.
Right?
I hated that when I was young.
Me too. I'm like, but you're trying to tell me I'm working my butt off. And because I don't know someone within the company or I don't know someone within whatever space I'm trying to get in, I'm not going to get the position. Like I got offended by that. And I think there are still a lot of us who do, get offended by that and not realizing that, wait a minute. It's not to say that you shouldn't work hard. It's not to say that you shouldn't put the work in. It's just simply saying, establish your personal brand so that when opportunities do come to mind, you are the person that, gets the first call, gets the email, gets, the connection. So I think that's an important point that you make.
Yeah. I mean, think of every mediocre to less than mediocre, to put it nicely, boss that you've had. Everyone's had that boss where you're like, how did you get here?
Yeah, or that colleague that didn't fit the position, and you're working your butt off to get there. But it comes back to knowing what you want And I think we get into jobs or we take on roles that we get complacent, right? And I think that's most of the times what happens. We get complacent in the position, we get overwhelmed, we have obligations. And as a result, we're focused so much on that and not necessarily on the things that we want.
Mm-hmm.
I can say from my own experiences, when I had that conversation with myself, like, okay, what is it I want? How do I want my brand to feel? What are my values? And I think it's important that you always tap into your values, right? Like, what are your core values? And your core values sometimes will tell you what is it you want and how do you want to represent yourself. So it's being intentional about everything, not just the things that you would have learned in college or at the workplace, but learning about yourself and knowing what you want and how you want to show up in your brand. And it has nothing to do with, oh, but I'm making good money, or I'm secure, I've been working here for 10 years, or whatever the case is, so I'm okay. But think of yourself, as you said, like outside of the company, outside of the firm, outside of the different spaces. How do you want to show up? So I think that's a great point. And I'm like just kind of glancing at the comments while we're
I'm
talking.
not even looking.
Oh no, I just because usually I go after and just kind of like listen to just see what persons are talking about. But it's been great so far, the feedback that's coming.
Like, I literally had no idea these comments were happening.
Oh, that's where I come in, just kind of like going through what Kim is saying, like, your company loyalty and looking at all these different aspects is not always
not two-sided tape. Yes, Kim.
Yeah. But this is my, so I mean, we talk about branding, we're talking about being intentional about you. I know you said there's like some coaching that you do, and there's some things that you're working on. Through the grapevine, I kind of sort of heard about what I called WWE. I just looked at it and I was like, because when I started, I was like, okay, this is definitely preparing, people to be able to go out in the world without having to wrestle. Right? Building your brand.
Which is why I use the initials TWWE.
So tell us a little bit about the WWE, and you can expand on what that acronym means.
Right. So it's the Winter Wheeler Experience, and it is an exclusive educational hub that you can join for free through my website, winterwheeler.com. And we are, the people who support me, the people who are behind me, really believe in my message. And my message is ultimately that mediation is everywhere. So the techniques that I use and the principles by which I live and mediate, they're involved in everything, every aspect of our lives. And so I want to show people that. So I've got several things lined up. Our first offering is a 2-hour continuing legal education program. And so we went, I decided to go with like your standard draw, right? Something that's gonna bring people in because it's helpful to them. So it's a free CLE, and what we're going to continue to do is kind of what I've been doing with my podcast, with the Mediate Now, and is talking to people from all walks of life, very different fields, but experts in their field, and really dissecting what it is they do and how that fits within the 4 cornerstones of mediation, which I realize we hadn't talked about yet. But the 4 cornerstones of mediation, it's the mediation methodology that I've trademarked and that I used, and that I also use, not only in work, but in my personal life as well.
Oh, I had the opportunity to sign up for it because I don't know if anyone knows, I'm like a fangirl over here. Like, because it sounds, when we say fan, like you fangirl over someone, it's like, oh, you're just like falling over the person, but it's inspiring to see the things that you accomplished, right? And the things that you're doing and building your brand, which means that everyone that's in your orbit, in your space. At least this is what I hope, that they're
Mhm.
aspiring for greater things. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the mediation space, whatever space you're
Right.
in. But when you have people in your space, it empowers you and inspires you. Because I'm as simple as I was talking, it's like I looked at your background, it's like, no way, winter background, and look at my background. It's like, no, that's what we want, right? We want to have a circle that really empower and inspire us. And the Mediate
Yeah.
Now experience, when I not the Mediate Now, that's the podcast, the Winter Wheeler experience, WWEC. I need to stick with WWE. WWE. When I looked at it, I was like, this is more of what we need, right? Creating spaces where people can get into, but be led by someone who not only knows what they're doing, but also showcase the talent and the possibilities of things happening. When you take it on yourself to brand yourself, to define
Mhm.
what your personal brand is, those opportunities come to you, not necessarily from others, but you are inspired and empowered to do different things, right? So I
Yes.
love that about you. I love the fact that you're inspiring others, whether or not you know it or not, to be better, right? To show up in
I
their
love
space
that.
differently. So this is why I wanted to have this conversation with you on being intentional about building your personal brand, because it's not about just getting up and saying, okay, this is what my personal brand is going to be, and just go about it. It's like, no, be intentional about it. Who are you and what are some of the things that you want to achieve? And then, of course, you create the supporting features of that, whether or not it's the podcast, whether or not it's the WWE experience, or, just your whole brand as a whole. So thank you very much for being here with me.
Thank
I wanted
you.
to always I'm thinking of making this a little bit more fun, because we talked about the heavy stuff of building your brand, but at the end of the day, it is part of you. So my question is, if you were to have because you're building this phenomenal brand, if you were to have someone play you in a movie or a television show, who would that be?
I mean, this is like the best question and the easiest question ever for me, because I've been thinking about it probably probably for 15 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I know, right? It's crazy. Gabrielle Union, hands down.
Oh, really?
I
And
love
I'm going
her.
to ask why. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask why. What made you choose Gabrielle Union?
I First of all, she's just gorgeous, right? Just drop dead gorgeous. And she comes across as like a very kind, sweet, genuine person. And I started watching her in oh God, what is the name of that show? I'm
Being
like,
Mary
so
Jane?
yes, being Mary Jane.
Yes.
And duh, yeah. And at the time, I was finishing like getting my certificate in broadcast journalism, and she plays a broadcaster, and it was just like it was so cool. And the show takes place in Atlanta. Well, part of it does, and it's just it made a lot of sense to me. I really like her. That's it. It's really not deeper than that.
Oh,
She's
no,
pretty.
that's I love her as well, just her personality. And as you said, she does come across as that genuine person. And it
Mhm.
goes back to, as much as that was a fun question, it just goes back to who you want to be and how you want to show up in the spaces that you're in. And thinking about that, it's like, yeah, if I can have this person play me, then you started to look at certain things that they're doing, and that
Yeah,
becomes who you are as a person. So thank you very much
absolutely.
for your answer. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to keep that as part of my fun question going forward with all my guests. So yeah,
It's a good
that's
one.
yeah, that was great. I love her as well. So thank you very much, Winter, for being here today. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much
Thank
to our
you.
audience for spending this time with us, whether or not you're watching the replay or you watched with us live. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate the comments. We see all of them. I will definitely go back and answer those. So don't feel as though you're going to be neglected from the show. We appreciate you being here. And Winter, thank you very much. Continue to
Thank
build
you.
a phenomenal personal brand. There's so many of us looking at you. I know it's going to be like a weight on your shoulder, like we're adding pressure. No pressure. We're just
No,
saying,
no pressure.
no pressure. We're just saying, just keep, climbing that ladder, because I think as a woman and being in a space where it's new to me, I'm looking for leaders, and you've definitely demonstrated your leadership skills and being able to influence others
Oh,
to
thank
really.
you.
I know this is going to be sappy at the end, but it's been an absolute pleasure knowing you and just following your career so far, and you building a brand for yourself. So winterwheeler.com. If you don't know it, now you know it. So thanks again.
Thank
Bye.
you.